So, intentionality. Where should that work into your day and your life? Our next speaker has some suggestions, so let's find out.
Building spirituality, family, health, and business. This is the Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.
Welcome, Giant Builders. I hope you're having a wonderful week. And today's guest has got a lot of things that he does. It's just, I was like overwhelmed reading all the things he does. We're going to have a lot to talk about. So it's Dennis Gingerich. Hi, Dennis, how are you?
I'm fine, Lois. It's good to see you. Honored to be a guest here.
Well, thank you. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, yeah, I'll start at the beginning. I was born and raised in Oregon, but I've been a Floridian for almost 39 years now. And I was raised on a farm, raised on a grass seed farm in Oregon. Always thought I'd be a farmer. And then ended up feeling the nudge and the call starting in high school with a high school principal that actually called it out in me. Said, you ought to consider being a pastor. And ended up clearly going that way and prepared for that. Went to college and seminary in Virginia, and then been sort of a northeastern, southeastern part of the U.S. ever since. I go back to Oregon regularly. My 92-year-old mother, I'll see her week after next. But been a Floridian here for many years now as a pastor. That's why I moved to Cape Coral, Florida. And one of the things I love about your podcast and Giant Builders, just the concept of building giants. It's just been a passion of mine over the years. Is to inspire transformational living in others in so many different ways, and I do that as a pastor. And so I'm winding down my years. I'm not in the lead seat anymore of the church my wife and I started 38 years ago. Moved here almost right at 39 years ago and launched 38 years ago. Um, I've turned it over to other younger leaders that lead. I'm still part-time on staff as one of the pastors, but I love doing other things too. I've loved photography my whole life. My wife always we've been married 50 years. In our 51st year now. We just finished up our 50th year back in December of this past year, and we're she always wondered why I was taking pictures of flowers and bees on flowers. Why don't you take pictures of people? And I guess I realize now how much nature photography and those sort of things have been an interest of mine and a passion for many, many years. Kind of worked on developing that about 15, 20 years ago to be intentional about that piece. But I love that, and I just one of the things that I'm really passionate about, of course, is my marriage, my family, my kids, my grandkids. Just to me, the theme of my life has been really a lot about intentionality, really being intentional about things, and that's why now I teach a class on photography. I do that in for 8 weeks in the spring and 8 weeks in the fall. Do a couple times a year, and helping people be intentional about learning their cameras, learning be intentional about what they're taking pictures of, and composition, and learning the creative parts of what their interests are, but just being intentional about it. A lot of people aren't very intentional about their lives, and before they know it, their lives are past, and they have all kinds of regrets of what they wish they had done, or wish they would have tried, or wish they would have the direction they would have done, and they just haven't been intentional. And to me, so much about my life and my passion from young on up has always been really being intentional about where I want to go, what I want to do, my calling, my interests, my hobbies, my whatever, that sort of thing. So that's sort of the overall rundown.
Okay, so tell me, what does intentional mean to you?
Well, I use a word in a lot of the phrases that we use. My wife and I host travel tours to Israel. We've been doing that for I think we're close to 30 years now. 97, I think we took our first group. to Israel and other places and so on. And we use the term inspiring transformational travel or inspiring transformational living through the lens or inspiring transformational living. And that's really a combination of two words. But the second part of that word transformational is really we want it to be a transforming experience. But we also want it to be an intentional experience, that you're being missional about it, you're on a mission. You're really being purposeful. That's the kind of language I like to use. It's purposeful. It's like it just things don't just happen usually. I mean, things just happen, but we have. I always love our lead pastor that is my successor here at Cape Christian, where I've been for the last 38 years. Is um, He always says we all have uphill hopes and dreams, uh, but we have a lot of downhill habits. And I love that because that really captures that intentionality. If you're going to live your upward hopes and dreams, that you envision big things and you want to accomplish this and you want to do that, but if you just don't do anything, you'll have a lot of downhill habits and you'll never get to where you want to go. So that intentionality just to me crosses over into every area of life, whether it's marriage, family, um, uh, goals about anything, what you do and what you accomplish. And people say, well, someday, yeah, I want to travel, I want to do that. Well, but if you never take that first trip or schedule that or block it off in your calendar or save up money for it or whatever, it just never happens. We have uphill hopes and dreams, but we have downhill habits, and I think intentionality is one of the ways to break that. You just have to be really intentional and missional and purposeful about that.
So in your experience, are there areas in that you find that people generally don't create intentionality?
Oh yeah. Well, as a pastor, I've seen it when you're helping people pick up the pieces of a marriage that's deteriorated and fallen apart. They had uphill hopes and dreams when they said their vows and stood before people and so on, but it's downhill habits. It's just not being intentional about nurturing and about caring and about building the relationship stronger it's the intentionality of the day to day. It's the intentionality of the special occasions. It's all of those things that really build something like a marriage strong. Or it's true in parenting. It's true in so many different ways. My wife was a labor and delivery nurse for 33 years here in our local hospital here. She retired a couple years ago, or I guess 3 years ago now, that she retired. But she always used to tell the babies, or the whole, as she was handing the babies and getting them down to the car, sending them out, or getting them out of their room, or the couple or whatever, she would always tell them the future is in your hands. And that little one, if you're not intentional about a whole lot of things, obviously people get intentional about, well, yeah, you got to have a feeding schedule, you got to change your diapers, you got to do those things. But what are you intentional about in terms of how you're raising that child, how you speak to that child, how you bring out the best in that child and speak dreams, for them, and what you dream of them becoming and who they are. It's really, it's so much intentionality, because if you just let whatever happens happen, you'll just be driven by your mood of the day, by everybody else's influence around it, it's just in every area of life. I think the people that become the giants, so to speak, are the ones who are really intentional about and purposeful about what they do um, in the little things. It's not the big thing, but little things, intentionality in the little things over a period of time become the big thing. in the long run.
Where do you think we should, like, if this, okay, I'm going to create intentionality in my life. Maybe somebody really hasn't focused on that.
Right.
How or what intentionality do you think they should start with?
Well, I think a self-examination is always a good part to say where haven't I been intentional? What do I feel the most need in right now at this stage of my life? I mean, because it's being intentional about different things at different stages of life. It's different now, in my older years as it was than it was in my younger years about intentionality, about and whether you're at a stage of, parenting or stage of grandparenting as I am now, I have to be really intentional about, it being connected to where I'm at in my journey. If it's a health thing that beginning of the year, I think we've already passed the date when people usually have forgotten their New Year's resolutions. But we're past that. But I say I want to get in better health. I want to get in better shape or whatever. Well, that may just start with as small as saying, okay, I'm just going to get out and walk a mile, or if you can't walk a mile, I walk a couple every day. Try to do, but I'm just gonna do a half a mile, or to the end of the street and back, or just to the end of the driveway and back, wherever. It's micro habits, really. A lot of times, it's people make the big goal somewhere, the big resolution or whatever, and then they don't keep it because they just haven't started with the little thing. And if it's eating more healthy or whatever, well, then just start with replacing one snack a day with something that's like healthy, a fruit or something like that that's healthy. It's the little things that really lead to the big things. It's people make it way too complicated and set these big monster goals about things, and then they find themselves falling far behind. Just develop the little habits, the little things that are you're being intentional about, where you just literally think about, okay, I'm going to do this instead of, I'm going to do this today, or instead of, and I think that's how it starts. And then you tend to get your own self good feedback when you see changes starting to happen, and then that motivates you to even do more or try harder to be intentional about things. But uh, I think people, my parents always, don't bite off more than you can chew. It's really that idea is the way I was raised about don't bite off more than you can chew. It's that way in intentionality too. Just it's the little things. The little things ultimately determine the big things.
Oh, I so agree. I was listening to John Maxwell this morning, and
Oh
he
yeah.
was,
Mhm.
yeah, I really like his recordings and
Yeah,
such.
he's influenced me a lot over the years, over the
Yeah.
last 30 years.
And, he
Right.
was talking about, write down your goals. 70%
Mhm.
of people who write down their goals accomplish their goals. And so,
Mhm.
and then I've also heard from other people, which that's what I did this year. I actually made a recording the end of 2024, a recording of me talking about all my successes in 2025. So
Oh
then I
yeah.
listen to that 3 times a day. So that's kind of like encouraging me and feeding my mindset on what I need to do to make this a reality. So I feel like that's kind of a very intentional
Yes,
project
it is.
put before me.
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's it's not always it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It just has to be deliberate
Mhm.
and in some way specific and in small increments of some sort.
That's
Yeah.
great. Well, Giant Builders, if you've liked this information, check out these episodes here. And I'll also have the links below that relate to this particular subject. And we'll keep continuing to feed you intentional information.
That's good.
So, any closing thoughts?
Um, oh, I think my closing thoughts are just to reinforce. I mean, my life. I'm at the stage of my life where I can look back at so many things, and and I can look back at so many things, and I don't. The thing is about that, I don't really like to spend a lot of time looking back because I'm still looking forward. I don't- you know, when you drive, you look in the rearview mirror occasionally, but if you spend your whole time looking in the rearview mirror, you probably might miss something in the front and have a crash or whatever. But I enjoy the view out the front when of the windshield, and I want my life to be that way, all the way, not just looking back saying, "Oh, those were the good old days. Oh, that was great. Or that was whatever." I think there's so much more yet to be accomplished. But the advantage of being older, as I am now, is that I can look back and I can see the results. I can see the results. And I'm in a situation in a setting where, in my role as a photographer, for example, I mean, I'm blessed to, see. Um, what started as just an interest, a hobby, and then I became intentional about learning and growing. I took a couple photography workshops. I went on my first big one was Glacier National Park for 5 days with five other guys and a professional photographer, and that took me a whole jump up in terms of my own understanding and capability and just the camaraderie and everything that just motivated me to a higher level. And I've done things like that since, and more of that, but just the learning, whether it's that's just an area of intentionality, and then I've seen the rewards of that. I've seen how much better I've gotten, and other people have recognized the quality of my photography, and I've won some awards and multiple magazine covers and things like that in our area here for tourism industry and Chamber of Commerce kinds of stuff. And that's the result of being really just intentional. I remember the first time that I there was a photographer I really loved and loved his work, and he was going to be in St. Augustine. That's about a 5 hour drive from where I'm located down in Southwest Florida. And I drove up there to hear him speak for 2.5 hours and drove back that night. Drove back, but it inspired me. I was so inspired by what he said and by everything, and I got to meet him and see more of his work, and so, and it inspired me to take other steps. And then later I scheduled to invested in doing the one in Montana at Glacier, and so it's the little intentionality about things, and then I saw the quality of my work started going up significantly, and so that's what I love to do with the class that I teach in the fall and the spring is out of that. And I mean, there's feedback to me as one of the instructors. Now I brought another guy in with me to help me if I don't happen to be there or whatever. I had mentored him in photography for a while, and we love to see the fact that we have photographers that go out of there who always had an interest, and they had cameras and didn't know how to use, didn't know what the settings were, they didn't know what all the buttons meant. They learn it, and they go out of there, and we've had several of them start businesses. One of them's a school teacher. She does it part-time on the side, doing family photography. She's doing amazing work and making a nice little side income. And another one left her job and that she had done for years and went full time. And after that 8 weeks of just the inspiration to inspire others to take little steps and to live their dreams. And now out of the very last class, we had another one that launched her business and family photography and maternity shoots and things like that. And it gives them the confidence because they actually become comfortable with their cameras. They become comfortable with knowing and basic understandings of composition and being around other people. And then the last night of the 8 weeks, I always have the ones who've launched and made it and turned it into a business and done that. I have them come back and speak and show their stuff and their greatest stuff and do kind of a Q&A with them. And so that usually inspires others to say, hey, I've always wanted to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try it. And it's fun to be at the stage of life now where I'm getting to see my fruit grow on the trees of others.
Mm.
And that's more rewarding than seeing your own fruit, really. It's when you've planted seeds and you've seen it, and now it's growing on other people's trees, and they're flourishing and they're producing, and there's a good harvest in their lives. To me, that's the beauty of getting older. You get to see that, and I get to see that in multiplied ways. As a pastor now of a church that, there were three couples of us that launched this thing, and back in 1986, and now to see, probably six services every weekend, right at almost 6,000 people every weekend. To see that happening, you just see, and I have very little to do with it now. I had a lot to do with it at the beginning, but now I see my fruit growing on a lot of other people's trees, it's a wonderful season of life, and I think that's why I want to keep looking forward, because you just get different stages. A lot of the time in the early years, you're doing it yourself, and you're producing and you're seeing your direct results and fruit. Whatever. Later, you see this when you've handed off things and you've inspired others and you've invested in others and planted in others. You're seeing them flourish and you're seeing them produce fruit. And when you do that, it's even more rewarding at this stage to see it in multiplied ways through other people. And not I get more joy and a sense of significance, I think, out of that, seeing my fruit grow on other people's trees now than I did seeing it grow on my own tree in the earlier years of life.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I think for me right now, it's the feeding of my grandchildren, just in inspiring
mhm,
them to be their best or whatever their interests are.
right.
Mm.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. So, yep, that's kind of my thing.
Well, thank you, Ninnis. I really appreciate your time and just serving and just really encouraging us to be intentional in whatever we do. I think God's guiding us in those processes
Yeah.
as well. So I thank you for your time.
Yeah, it was great, and thank you for the honor of being on your podcast. That's great.
Oh, it was a pleasure. All right, Giant Builders, we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.